In ordinary strip malls between nail salons and tax preparers, a particular type of storefront repeats itself. Frosted windows, soft lighting, a generic sign promising relaxation and wellness. To most passersby, it blends into the background of suburban commerce. But behind many of these doors exists a parallel economic system, one that has grown into a resilient, multi-billion-dollar gray market, not because American law is absent, but because it is present in very specific ways. The illicit massage business, or IMB, is not simply a criminal underworld operating outside the rules. It is an institution that has evolved by learning exactly where the rules are weak, fragmented, or misaligned. This is not a story about vice in the abstract. It is a story about institutional design, about how licensure systems, immigration policy, business law, and local enforcement interact to create pressure points, and how an underground market forms precisely where those pressures don't align. Start with the legal facade. Massage therapy in the United States is, on paper, a regulated health and wellness profession. Most states require practitioners to complete hundreds of hours of training, pass standardized exams, and obtain state licenses. There are boards, continuing education requirements, and professional associations. These rules create high barriers to entry for legitimate therapists. They also signal to consumers that massage is a credentialed, quasi-medical service. But here is the institutional gap. In many states, you need a license to perform massage. You do not need a massage license to own a massage business. That separation between licensed labor and unlicensed capital creates a foundational opening. A person can form a limited liability company, sign a commercial lease, and open a storefront advertising massage services without personally holding any therapeutic credentials. Enforcement of who is actually providing services inside the building is reactive and complaint-driven, not continuously monitored. In institutional terms, the system regulates the worker far more tightly than it regulates the enterprise. Labor is scrutinized. Capital is comparatively free. That imbalance becomes the first pressure point. Now consider who can realistically pass the licensure system. Training programs require tuition, English proficiency, and time. Exams are standardized and language dependent. For immigrants with limited financial resources, unstable legal status, or limited English, these barriers are significant. Meanwhile, the demand side of the market, consumers seeking sexual services disguised as massage, does not disappear because licensure is strict. This is where the gray market forms. Strong rules on paper, uneven capacity to comply in practice, and persistent demand. A storefront that looks like a legitimate massage spa becomes a legal shell within which a very different labor arrangement can operate. Inside the IMB model, labor and capital are organized in ways that mirror formal franchising systems, only without the legal protections or transparency. Absentee investors, often linked through loose networks, supply startup capital. They form LLCs, sign leases, and purchase basic furnishings. On paper, these are small wellness businesses. Labor is sourced through migration networks. Many workers are immigrant women facing economic precarity, language barriers, debt, or immigration vulnerabilities. Some may believe they are coming for legitimate massage work. Others understand the nature of the job, but see few alternatives that offer comparable earnings. In either case, their bargaining power is structurally weak. Housing is frequently tied to the workplace. Workers may live in the same building or in employer-controlled apartments. Transportation, food, and daily logistics are often mediated by the business operator. This creates economic dependency that resembles company towns more than independent contracting. Even without overt physical restraint, the institutional environment narrows exit options. Operationally, the IMB functions through a dual menu system. The storefront presents a legitimate service, massage therapy. That front provides plausible deniability, access to commercial real estate, and insulation from immediate suspicion. Behind that front, illicit services are transacted through coded language, repeat customers, and referrals. The physical layout of these businesses is not random. Buzzers at locked doors, interior partitions, blocked windows, and security cameras are risk management tools. They reduce the probability of surprise inspections, manage customer flow, and create controlled spaces for transactions. In economic terms, the design lowers the transaction costs of illegal activity while raising the detection costs for regulators. Seen this way, the IMB is not chaotic crime. It is a coldly rational adaptation to a specific regulatory environment. High demand, limited legal supply, weak business oversight, fragmented enforcement. The market fills the gap with an institution optimized for those conditions. But institutions do not operate unopposed. They generate friction with other parts of the system. Law enforcement is one such counterforce. Traditional vice stings targeting individual buyers or workers tend to produce low-level misdemeanor charges. These cases are time-consuming, resource-intensive, and rarely disrupt the underlying business structure. Arresting a worker does not dismantle the LLC, cancel the lease, or freeze the bank account. From an institutional perspective, the enforcement cost is high and the structural impact is low. This has pushed many jurisdictions toward a different legal strategy, reframing cases as human trafficking or labor exploitation. These charges carry heavier penalties and, more importantly, open pathways to asset forfeiture, property seizures, and prosecution of owners and managers rather than just workers. The legal system is, in effect, searching for leverage points that map onto the actual power structure of the enterprise. At the same time, another set of actors exerts pressure. Local communities, residents often mobilize through zoning boards, city councils, and nuisance ordinances. They may not have the tools to prove criminal activity, but they can challenge signage, parking, business permits, or code violations. Zoning becomes a proxy enforcement mechanism. The storefront is attacked not as a crime scene, but as a land use problem. Yet even as formal institutions push back, informal ones stabilize the market. Online review platforms and forums have historically played a significant role in reducing search costs for buyers. These platforms function like shadow Yelp systems, providing ratings, coded language, and location data. They are not neutral bystanders. They are market infrastructure. By organizing information, they increase demand predictability and help businesses signal reliability. Even when platforms are shut down, new ones emerge, illustrating how digital infrastructure adapts alongside physical storefronts. The result is a layered ecosystem. Storefronts on the ground, digital directories online, migration networks, supplying labor, and shell companies structuring capital. Each layer responds to pressure from regulators, police, and communities. Each adjustment makes the system more resilient. This brings us to the institutional crossroads. One path forward is the crackdown model. This approach treats IMBs primarily as criminal enterprises rooted in trafficking and exploitation. It calls for stricter business licensure, more aggressive inspections, broader use of trafficking statutes, and tighter coordination between local, state, and federal agencies. The theory is that raising the cost of operating these businesses through raids, prosecutions, and asset seizures will make the model unsustainable. From an institutional perspective, this strategy attempts to realign the risk calculus. If the expected cost of enforcement exceeds the expected profit, the market should contract. But this assumes enforcement can be both consistent and targeted at the true centers of control, not just the most visible workers. The alternative path is the decriminalization and labor model. Advocates here argue that criminalization itself creates the vulnerability that IMBs exploit. When sex work is illegal, workers cannot easily report abuse, negotiate openly, or access standard labor protections. When immigration pathways are narrow and precarious, workers become dependent on informal employers. In this view, the shadow system is not just a criminal phenomenon. It is a market signal that formal institutions are failing to provide safe, legal channels for labor and migration. Under this model, reform would focus on expanding legal labor rights, clarifying immigration status, and regulating adult services openly rather than pushing them into disguised storefronts. The goal is to shift activity from a hidden, high-control environment into a transparent, labor-regulated one. Critics argue this could reduce exploitation by removing the leverage that secrecy and illegality create. Both models are, at their core, institutional redesign proposals. One increases repression and enforcement. The other increases formalization and labor protection. Each changes the incentive structure in different ways. Each carries trade-offs in political feasibility, moral framing, and unintended consequences. What is clear is that the status quo is not accidental. The persistence of illicit massage businesses is not simply a story of bad actors evading good laws. It is a story of mismatched rules. Licensure systems that regulate therapists, but not owners. Business laws that make forming shell companies easy. Immigration systems that produce large pools of precarious labor. Local governments that have zoning tools but limited investigative capacity. Law enforcement agencies that face high costs for low-level vice cases. Together, these create the pressure points. And in the spaces between them, a shadow institution takes shape, visible in plain sight, yet structurally hidden. The storefront in the strip mall is not just a business, it is a mirror. It reflects how fragmented governance can unintentionally create markets that are simultaneously illegal, tolerated, and economically rational. It shows how labor vulnerability and regulatory design interact. It forces a question that goes beyond one industry. When a shadow system becomes this widespread, the issue is not only the actors inside it, it is the architecture around it. The enduring question is not whether illicit massage businesses should be rated or regulated. It is which set of institutional rules will ultimately govern the demand, the labor, and the capital that currently meet in the shadows. Until those rules align with economic reality, the pressure will remain and the system will keep finding ways to operate in the seams.